So question 9 says use long division to find the quotient and the remainder again. So let's see if we make this happen again. So our divisor is this z squared minus this 22z plus 1. So those degrees all count down to 1, 0. And then what we're dividing into is the zx, z to the fourth. Notice that the third term is missing, so plus 0z cubed minus 482 c squared. We're also missing the linear term, so 0x and then plus 1. So again, once we lay that out, it's pretty straightforward after that. So we're learning, what times z squared gives me z to the fourth. Well, I need two more z's, z squared. So then we multiply z squared times z squared would be z to the fourth. Z squared times negative 22z would be negative 22z cubed. And z squared times 1 would just be a positive 1z squared. So remember, to find the remainder of that, you have to subtract, which we change the signs and add. So that turns into negative, that turns into positive, and that turns into a negative. And then if we add those together, the z to the fourth will zero out. That comes down as a 22z cubed. And that gives me a negative 483 c squared. And we'll bring down the 0x. We need 3 terms there, since this is 3 terms. So then we turn our attention back to the top. What times z squared gives me this 22z to the third? What times z squared, 22 to z? I need a 22 and a z. So I need a plus 22z. So 22z times z squared does give me what I need there. So that's going to be a 22z cubed. And then 22 times a negative 22. I'm not real good on that. 22 times a negative 22. Negative 484. Yep, so negative 484 z squared. That's correct. And then 22z times 1 would be 22z. So then we want to subtract. That means we're going to change the signs and add. So if we do this, we're seeing the 22's zero out. Negative 43 and a 484, that's one difference. So that's going to just give me a z squared. And that's going to be a negative 22z. And then the 1 slides down. So we got to do this one more time, it looks like. So what times z squared is z squared? Well, I just need a 1 there. So 1 times z squared is z squared. 1 times a negative 22z is a negative 22z. And 1 times 1 is 1. So remember, our technique there is to change the signs. So this turns into a negative, this turns into a positive, and this turns into a negative. And then I just want to add them together. Notice that these are all opposites. So this is a positive z squared, and that's a negative z squared, that's 0. Negative 22z and a positive 22z, that's a 0. And a 1 and a negative 1, those are opposites. So that gives me all are 0. So that just means the remainder is 0. So our quotient is actually the z squared plus the 22z plus the 1. And our remainder is 0. So that means z squared minus 22z plus 1, it would be the factor, and it's actually the same factor. Both of them are factors, since the remainder is 0.